Hello to everyone. According to the participants lists, I know still it's not completed, but we've got exactly 5 o'clock p.m. and this is what tells me to start our meeting. So officially, on behalf of the Comarch Training Center, welcome you to this meeting. My name is Sławek Sroka, and as announced, I'm going to show you how you can start your Excel automation adventure story in a few simple examples. We could have only few because we've got only 4 lesson hours here, training hours here, so not enough time to have more. But I hope in these simple examples I can show you how to start this story, how to start thinking about automation of the application Excel, and this is what is my target. I hope it's along with yours, so we'll see. But before we begin, first of all, I've got some technical notes here, because you should know that first, due to the large number of participants, it's not possible for me to be able to answer all the questions that will be posted. And of course, nevertheless, you've got your chat window, you can leave your questions there. And of course, I will answer them after the meeting. Second, any technical problems you could have during this meeting, you should report to training organizer, because as I cannot verify the causes of the problem here. That's a very important information, so this is what I'm telling you at the very beginning. So I think we should start. Let's get started then. And as for training schedule and plan, as concerns that plan and training schedule, first step, what I am going to present to you is how to record all the stuff you've got in Excel when you do your work, because it's possible. It means Excel application has the engine that is called macro recorder, and you could use it only to record all the steps you do. That's the first step of the meeting. This is what I want to show you at the very beginning. Then I will show you that you could edit all that code, all that stuff you recorded. And this is usually a must, because what is recorded usually when you try to run and get the same result, it gives you an error message, and this is why usually you should edit that content. And I will show you then how to do that and how you should understand what is written there, because it's very important to have a given approach to that operation. And then I show you how recording macro, you could start, for example, one of this possible automation, like how to automate filtering your data. Because usually if you've got big tables having many columns and you are responsible for setting the filter across many different columns of this range, so finally doing this manually takes some time. And if you're responsible for repeating that operation many times, it's good to record the macro storing all the settings to have them then just by one click. And this is what we are going to do next. Finally, I will show you that it will be even very comfortable to run your macros just by clicking a button or using a shortcut. This is what could be done, and this is what I'm going to present as one of these informations here. And all this stuff, for all this stuff, we've got the time till let's say 20 p.m. But because we should have some simple, so short breaks, I suggest we work in the time schedule like 1 hour, a clock hour, and after, in between this 1 hour lessons, I suggest to have 10 minutes breaks. So if we've got 2, so we've got 3 parts. Every part will last 1 hour, 1 clock hour, and after we will have 1 10 minutes break. So we should finish our meeting 20 past 20, so or maybe 20 past 8 o'clock p.m. That's schedule, that's plan, but maybe to remind once again, because as I know you've got already such a message, but it's good to remind. Remember that after this meeting you will get certificates. You will have at the same time taking part in that meeting here. You got 25% of the discount for the training, because you should remember that what I'm presenting here is a part of the training that will take its time on March. So if you want to take part in it, so you can sign in. So for that, you've got 25% of discount, and you should remember at the same time that at the end of this meeting, I will give you a challenge. I mean, just give you a task to solve, and if you then send this solution and it will be correct, so one of those that give us the correct answer and correct solution for that task, so we will just prepare a simple lottery and we'll just draw one person. We select one person that will take part in that training in March for free. This is what it's good to remember, especially what I present at the end of the training. I mean, the task to solve will be presented at the end of the meeting. So remember about this, and as concerns the task I will prepare for you. So try to send back these solutions to the email address. It could be training.comarch.com or my email address slavomir.sroka@comarch.com. This is an email address you could send the solutions to. And of course, the task will be sent as well to you via the email. So if you've got some problems to understand directly from that meeting, so it will be sent as well. So you've got some time to prepare and to do that. All right, so this is what I wanted to present at the beginning as the first part of the training. And another thing, once again, I can't hear you. I can't answer in real time on all these questions you've got. So forgive me, but this is the problem if we've got many participants. But I'm trying to show you all these steps. I will present to you starting all these examples from scratch. So I've got nothing prepared. You can observe what I'm doing. At the same time, if you like, you could do all these things with me, along with me. You could just repeat all these steps. I will try to show you it so that you can have some time to repeat all these steps and to make sure if it's working for you in your environment. I'm going to use the application Excel in the version 2019, but it doesn't matter in general what is your Excel version. This is because all these elements we are going to use to automate these tasks, they are common to all the versions of the application Excel, especially that we will refer to the core part of the application, like auto filter, what is present, from, let's say, ancient times. That is why it will be working. Never mind what is that Excel version, it will be working. Even if you use 2003 version, it will be still working for you. So that is why you don't have to bother about the Excel version you've got. All right. That's all what I want to present to you using that presentation. All the next steps you will see in application Excel. So I'm switching to that application. I'm opening that application, and this is what I suggest you do the same, especially that I think it's good for you to repeat all these steps, trying to do the same. What we do usually, we keep in mind, and that's why it's good to repeat. So I'm opening Excel application, and I will present, as I promised, I just built a completely new document. This is very important to have it. And finally, what you could have here as a sample data we want to work with, try at that moment to just copy a small part of your table you work with as a sample data. Because it doesn't matter what it will be. That is why I suggest you copy the content you've got in your files. It will be good to check if it works for you using your data, right? That's how you can make sure if it's okay or not. So what I suggest now, let's find a file when you have some content, some tables you are going to then work with. It could be quite a good example when you've got some data where you have numbers, text values, dates maybe. So try to do that now. I'm going to use some sample file I've got here prepared. As I said, it doesn't matter what it will be. I'm just copying a simple table I've got here, simple table that contains, let's say, employees data, like for example, ID, first name, last name, salary value, but it doesn't matter what is that data set. This is why just copy what you've got in some files you work with. It will be better. That's why I suggest you use your copy of data. And I copy it to the clipboard and paste to my document. Of course, usually when you work with data, the problem is it could be located in different parts of your sheet. And if you want to automate your task, it will be quite problematic, because setting this range it's not so easy usually, especially that it could be if each time in a different position. This is usually the problem when automating, because if it's always in a different position of your document on your sheet, so finally macro won't work because the range is located completely different part of the sheet. So this is one of these important elements of the macro that we should change a little bit so that it's more flexible, working in every situation we've got. This is what I'm going to show you. Okay, so I'm pasting here the data here just for simplicity now at the first cell of that sheet. That's how we can simplify a little bit the reference. But finally, I will show you how to make it more general, working more general, so that you will have the macro working even if the table is located somewhere else on the sheet. But of course, let's start from the simple situation, right? It's quite often our tables start in the first cell of the sheet, so we could assume it's quite good to assume that we could have such a situation in a document. All right. So, as I said at the beginning, all these operations you are going to automate could be recorded. It means no matter what you do in Excel, you could, for example, click the cell, copy that data to other sheet, filter your data, creating new sheet. All these operations could be recorded. And it's like voice recording. So finally, if you record, you could replay. Replaying from that point of view means rerunning all these operations recorded. It means that if you apply the filter and you record that operation, so you replay that then, and Excel automatically will set all these criteria you define during this macro recording. And this is how it will be done. And that's the first tab I want to show you, how to start recording the operations you do in Excel, because that's the beginning of your story and the easiest operation you could have here, right? So how to automate, how to record all these steps you do in Excel. This is what macro recorder is doing. And macro recorder is a part of application Excel. So it means that here in the interface, you could find where is the macro recorder. This is what you could have easily by the tab that is called View. That is called View. The View tab here on the left side has the button macros, and this button is two positions, because you've got here two parts of the button with the icon and with the drop down arrow. The second one you click, and that's how you get an access to all these options that are hidden here. And this is one of these is record macro. Here you've got an access to the macro recorder. But at the same time, usually if we want to work faster here, it's better way not to go here to the view menu, but it's good to have this macro recorder accessible anywhere. I mean, no matter what is that tab we're in, what is that ribbon position we're in, the access to the macro recorder to start recording faster, right? Because it's not a good idea to go through view, clicking the button, record the macro, and you want to use it very often, so it takes time. So you could have this button, record macro. You could have this button visible on the status bar. So maybe to explain, status bar this is the bottom part of the application window, the bottom tab of the application window, where you've got a zoom bar. That's a status bar. Where you've got the zoom bar, this is the status bar. And if you want to present on the status bar this macro recorder button, the only thing to do is to click right mouse button, and choose from all these options there that will be displayed in the context menu, macro recording. So that position must be checked. If you click one time, you select, and the second time you unselect. So just click to select, and that's how you make this button of the macro recorder visible on the status bar. So having it there, you've gotten access to this tool every time, no matter what is the position you've got here active on the ribbon. So for us, it will be easier to run the macro recorder. That is why it's good to have it there. And after selecting, look what happens here on the status bar. You can see an extra button. It's not looking like a button, but it is kind of a link to your macro recorder. And you can see here extra element that is not usually visible. When you just hover over that button, you can see that no macros are currently recording. Of course, quite obvious, we just have a button here, but we hadn't started yet this macro recorder. And now we are able to do that. So now we are ready. And first of all, before we start recording, we should decide about what we are going to record. So maybe before we record the operation that allow us to define the filter, first of all, I'm going to record a very, very simple operation. This operation that is selecting the range of cells. This is because using that solution here, that example, I will present to you the main ideas that are very important if you want to understand the code of the macro. Because what will be recorded is very simple. It will be easy for you to understand how it's organized. And finally, it will be easier to imagine what is going on in other macros. So this is the operation we are going to record. Selection of a given range of cells. No matter what will be that selection, I will show you what is that code that will be stored, recorded by the macro recorder. Okay, so now knowing what we are going to record, I'm clicking the button we added to the status bar. So I'm clicking this button. And you should see on the screen a dialog window that is called record macro. And here you could decide about some important elements that is related to macros. Like, for example, what is the macro name? Or maybe what is that shortcut you want to use to run it? Or maybe where this macro should be stored, where it should be recorded. As an extra thing here, you could have a description as well. But at that moment, you should know that it's not a must to define everything here, especially that you could change then what is the macro name, what is the shortcut key for it, what is the location. So every part of that settings here could be changed after, and it's not only one place where it could be done. But at that moment, it's good to discuss two things that are very important. First, the macro name. So you can't have here special characters in the name. So you can't use, for example, spaces. You can't use a dot. You can't use special characters. And this is something that, let's say, it's quite obvious. If you use in the name special characters, it's looking like rather bizarre, but it's at the same time not allowed. And especially remember, spaces are not allowed. You can't use space. If you want to have the macro stored with many words, they should be connected or concatenated, or maybe if you don't like it, so use underscore, because underscore, this is what is allowed here as part of the name. So for us, let's say it will be the name, well, let's assign the name like selecting range of cells, right? Selecting range of cells. This is because the name of the macro tell us what the macro is doing. This is what we are going to record. That's why I'm calling this macro select range of cells. As you see, that's a concatenation of different words, and I'm not using this underscore because it's looking quite readable if we use a technique with upper lowercase letters. So each word starts with the uppercase letter. That's how we can make it more readable, even if it's only one string. So that's, in general, main rule used by programmers, and always you could use such a rule when coding. The second thing, shortcut. At that moment, we don't care. We don't want to use the shortcut at that moment. I will show you then how to define it for the existing macro. At that moment, it's not so important, so I omit the discussion about this. But what is important in that moment is where we are going to store the macro, because it has meaning. And first of all, when you just go to the list, just by expanding the list, you can see that we've got here 3 positions, like this workbook, like new workbook, and personal macro workbook. So new workbook is nothing special. I mean, if you choose new workbook, so the macro will be, before the macro will be recorded, first of all, Excel automatically will create new workbook, and there the macro will be stored. So because we start from a new one, we've got already a new document. So for us, if you want to store your macro along with the document and the document content, so you could choose this workbook, and this is what I suggest here. But at the same time, you've got a special document that is called personal macro workbook. This is very useful solution if you want to write the macros you want to use across many different documents, because you should remember that the macros are accessible, so you could use them, you can run them only if you've got this document where it was stored open. So this document must be open if you want to use that macro and run it. Because if it's not, you can't run it. You can't run the macro. And what is the personal macro workbook? So the personal macro workbook is a special document that is managed by Excel. So it means that Excel automatically save this document, close it, and open. This is a hidden document, so you can't see what is that. You even can't see it's open or maybe it's closed because it's hidden. Of course, you could unhide, but you know, usually we don't want to, because it doesn't make sense to do that usually. But because it's managed by Excel, we don't have to bother about opening and closing that document. It's still open, because when you start your application, this document is always open at the Excel application start. So finally, for us, it's good because if you store then the macros there in the personal macro workbook, all these macros are always accessible. You could run them on every document, no matter what is that document work with, you could run these macros. So what's that concept? Quite good for us, because it means that if I've got general purpose macros I can use across many different documents, it's a good idea to store that macro in a personal macro workbook, and because it will be accessible everywhere. But if we define a macro that is exactly dedicated for the data we got in that given document, so the best choice will be to store it exactly in this workbook, in this particular document. And this is the choice for us. It means we are going to apply the filtering criteria, then exactly that is related to our data here. It's quite obvious it's dedicated to that data, because maybe in other documents the filtering criteria will be different. So this is why we decide to choose here this workbook, especially that it's good to store it exactly along with the document we work with. That's why I suggest to choose this workbook at that moment. And by the way, description could be, I'm just writing here comment part. Of course, I'm writing this text only to then show you where it's located in our code, so that you can recognize, this is the comment that was added. But it's not so important to write here a text. As I said, it could be easy way edited then, and that's why I'm just writing just comment part, that's it. And now you are ready to start recording, because by now nothing was recorded. That's the first step before that operation start. And when now you click OK, every single step you do is recorded. So be careful. Usually if you want to record the macro, you should be prepared. I mean, you should know what are these steps you want to follow one by one, because otherwise if you do some steps that you don't want to have as a part of the macro, finally, unfortunately, they will be a part of this macro because it will be recorded. So every single cell click, even using scroll bars here, all these steps will be recorded. So it's rather not a good idea, because then finally your macro will be moving the view of the screen and doing all these steps. And by the way, it's not efficient. Your macro will last longer, will run longer, because it will do a lot of operations that are not needed to get the result. This is why usually if you want to record the macro, be prepared. I mean, try to do only those operations that gives you the result and nothing else. Let's click to remind. The only thing we are going to do is to select that branch, nothing else. We just select that branch. So I'm clicking OK. I'm selecting that branch. Of course, it's not a must to have all this branch selected, because finally we could change it easy way. I'm just selecting that branch. This is the only operation I'm doing. And now I'm going back to the status bar. I'm going back to status bar, and here the button that was of the shape of the, it looks like the icon of the sheet with the wheel, and now it's a square. It looks like in the player stop button, right? So you could click it to stop recording the macro, and you should remember all this. You should stop recording the macro. You forget, so all these steps then will be still recorded, and sometimes it causes Excel crash. So remember that you should stop recording the macro. You should stop recording the macro if you finish all the steps. That gives you a final result. For us at that moment, we stop. So I'm clicking the stop button. And now it's time to see what is that code that was recorded. Because once again, usually you are forced to edit the macro. This is because if you try to run it once again, so finally you will see that it won't work. Usually it won't work. This is because your data changes, the data changes its size. So finally even if it's working only for the given group of data, but not more. And that's why you have no choice. You have to just go and edit the content so that it works for all the data you've got in your document. And this is why we have to know how to edit macros, and we have to know how to do that. So first of all, you should know that we need an extra application to do that. And this application is a part of Office installation. It's not exactly the part of Excel, but Office installation. So you could have an access to that application through PowerPoint, through Word application as well, because it's installed along with the Office package. It's very easy to run it and to then edit those macros, because once again, you've got two different possible ways of running this macro. The first one, maybe once again, you can do that by a View tab. You can go there to View tab and go to the macros button. This time, when you click the first part with the icon, the first part of this button with an icon, you just open a View Macros window. View Macros window, that's the one here. If you like, you've got a shortcut to it, Alt F8 if you like. But if you click this button with the icon, so you will see the list of all these macros you recorded. And if you want to edit the given one, just select and click Edit button. That's how that's the easiest way of running this application, allowing you to edit macros. That's the easiest way. The second is the easiest if you don't like shortcuts, because the easiest way is to use shortcut Left Alt and F11. So it means that first is that one here, and the second is Left Alt and F11. That's how you can have it very fast. So I'm clicking Edit. Of course, as you see here, you can run it at the same time. So it means from that window, you could run the given selected macro. So you could say, repeat all these steps that I recorded. That's how you do when you click Run. It means repeating all the steps that you've got recorded. But we should edit it first. So I'm clicking Edit. And when you click Edit, as I said, new application will be open, and that application is called Visual Basic Editor. That's an extra application. That's once again a part of the Office package. And with that application, you could edit the content of your macros. It's organized, as you see, different way. So the interface looks different, and like we could say it's old style, right? The menus you've got here, these are the menus with a list of options. So you've got drop-down lists allowing you to choose a given position there, and plus the set of icons, toolbars, that are organized in different panels. So you can see you got different panels here, you could manage them as well. But in general, what you've got here in that Visual Basic Editor, you've got several panes. Here, the main part, you've got 3 panes. The first one is called Project Explorer, and this Project Explorer lists all these projects you've got access to. So depending on what is your situation, you could have here one or many different projects. For example, if you've got many files open, you will see all these projects related to those files. Of course, even if you've got no macros there, still they will be visible as projects on this list. The same could be with add-ins. Excel could have add-ins. You know probably that you could install some add-ins, or you could even use them. So finally, if you've got some add-ins installed, you will have this listed here as projects. For example, for me, I've got the add-in called Toolbox, and as you see, it's one of these projects I've got listed here. So I've got Vba Project Toolbox XLAM. It's one of these add-ins that you could have, for example, in your project. So it will be visible here. But let's focus on that file we work with, the one that was not saved already. It's called Book 1. And what you see here, it's two folders. The first one is Microsoft Excel objects, and the second is modules. Where the macro is stored, the macro you recorded, is exactly the folder called modules. So when you click that folder and you open the list of possible elements there, you will see at that moment one single module. And if you want to see the given content, you double click that module. Of course, here it's not needed because we just clicked to edit a given macro, so this code is open. But if it was closed, look, if I close it and I want to see the content of the module, I'm double clicking, and that's how I get the content of the given module. So your macros are stored in modules, and these modules starts to be a part of your project and a part of your document. It means that now when you want to save your document, it will contain all this content you've got usually in your document, like data, the tables, and all that stuff in there, along with that code we recorded. It will be part of your document, right? But first, let's analyze the code. Maybe to present it exactly the same version you've got on the screen, I just delete the first line here. This is because the line that was added at the beginning, option explicit, this is something that was added automatically because of settings I've got for that window. Because that setting is not important for you at that moment, this is why I'm deleting, so that we can see exactly the same content, on screen. So now let's start analyzing this code. What is that code here? First of all, you can see different colors, and it's not. It's very important. It's very important to differentiate in between, because now all these colors has meaning. For example, the blue text, the text that is marked with a blue color, these are words of the programming language called Visual Basic. And this is very important to differentiate in between, because you can't, for example, have the macro name like sub. This name is reserved for the Visual Basic, and the editor understand what is that meaning of the sub. Here, what means sub? So sub is a statement telling this editor that this is the beginning of the macro. Here it starts. And after sub, you should define what is the macro name. So this is what you recognize, right? This is the name we just wrote in the dialog window when we start recording. So after sub keyword of the Visual Basic, we got macro name. And the macro ends here with the statement and sub. So these two lines is doing nothing on the Excel side. This is because sub and sub, these are only the markers telling this editor where the macro starts, where it ends. This is because here in this module you could have many macros. It means that it's not only one we could have here. We could have them many. And that's why it's very important for the editor to understand where it starts and when it ends. So that's the beginning, that's the end of the macro. And this and sub, these are keywords of Visual Basic programming language. Good. Okay, so next part, this is a part that is marked with a green color. And these are comments. All you've got here in green, this is a comment. And here, even when we see that text comment part, we know, okay, that's the text that we add in the description field at the beginning when we started to record the macro. So it appears exactly in that position here. Another is here the macro name that was repeated here. But always comments you define starting with an apostrophe character. That's how you tell this editor that this is not a statement. This is just a comment. You could write any text here. This is to describe This is only to describe what's happening here. So even now, you could just write here a comment using some description that allows you to recognize what's happening here, right? So this is why it's good to have such a description. And it's always a good idea to describe all the parts of your code so that finally, if you come back after some time to see, to check, to do some changes, it will be easier for you by reading these commands to understand what's happening line by line. Consider them, maybe to show you, it's good, for example, before you just define your macro, have a description, what the macro is doing, right? So think about describe, not here, describe the macro here. Why not to do that here? The description you could have even after the statement. So for example, if you've got the statement, so after you could have the comment as well. So look, here we could write, that's the beginning of the macro. And here we could have a description telling that this is the end of the macro, the ending of the macro. So even here you could have a description after the statement. Of course, what is important is only to remember about the apostrophe. So apostrophe tells this editor that this will be a comment, only a text describing something, but it's completely nothing to do with the automation. It's nothing that take part in automation, just a description. At the same time, I'm going to delete the comments that were added automatically because it looks stupid. I mean, it's completely useless here, so I'm just removing them. I'm removing the one that was created for us. That's why I'm deleting. But at the same time, now it's time to describe a statement that we recorded. But because the only line that was recorded as an operation in Excel side, this is on the Excel side. This is exactly that statement. And if you read that statement, it's quite easy to recognize what's happening there, especially that we know what was that operation we recorded. And quite easy, right? We've got here the word range. Yeah, we understand. It looks like it's a range of cells because at the same time in the parentheses here, we've got a text, what I can recognize by the quotation marks. This is a text, but this text we very well understand because in Excel, it means a range of cells, right? This is how the range of cells are represented in Excel application. So yes, this is how you define a range of cells here. And then we've got a dot, and after we've got the information what we are going to do with that range. Here it's select, but I want to present to you very important information that is related to what you see here on the screen. Because if you want to start efficient way automate Excel application, you should understand how it is organized, here from the point of view of that editor and exactly from the point of view of programmer. So this statement you should understand a little bit different than just a statement. But first of all, I want to tell you very important information about how you should think of the application Excel from the programmer's point of view. So you should think about the Excel application like about the set of objects. So I'm writing it here as a description below. The application Excel is a set of objects. What could be an object? So, as an example of the object is a range of cells. That's the example of object. So, for example, range of cells. Maybe I'm just writing. For example, and I list some objects we could have in Excel. So, the first one we are discussing now, this is a range object, range of cells. but at the same time, the sheet is an object. Another example of object exactly is a worksheet, right? Worksheet. So one of these tabs you've got, write it this way. A worksheet. A workbook is an object as well. A pivot table, a chart. So all of them are examples of objects. Why I'm telling you about? Because now let's come back to this example and try to think in terms of objects. This is an object. This is an object. One of these objects you've got in Excel application. And what you've got after a dot, you've got the operation you could apply to your object, so to a range of cells. So it means what goes after a dot is kind of an operation you can do on that object. Usually it's very easy to guess what could be that operation because you know that from the Excel interface, right? When you choose a context menu or what is on the ribbon, you know what you can do with the range of cells. So that's a general shape of what you see here in the code. Always you should think in terms of such a description because that's how you can easy way guess what to do then. It means that always you've got here, no matter what it will be, you could work with pivots, charts, no matter what is that, it could be worksheet, always it looks the same. You just refer to the object and then you want to tell what you want to do with that object. That's how you automate. No matter what is that object, always it looks the same. So for example, now if I try to guess, so what I can do more with that range? I'm asking myself and I think, okay, so I write, first of all, I'm just trying to write my code and I'm clicking a dot then. And what happens now? Look, after this dot, you can see now the list of elements that tells you what you can do with that object. They are split to two different categories. As you see, you've got the icons with the green icon and let's say, what is that? Is rectangle or something like this, and then an icon with the hand showing the list. Doesn't matter what's that. We've got only two, so the green one and the gray one. So all of them tells you what you can do with that object. Some of these elements gives you the information about the object. They are kind of a feature. But look, if you go through these names, you can recognize some operations you usually do, like adding comment. Here we've got add comment, advanced filter, right? We know what's that. Some of them are completely mysteries, like allocate changes, what it means, but don't bother. It doesn't matter. You don't have to know everything, especially that usually we are not doing always everything on cell, right? We do only some of these operations that are possible to them. And same here. So it means we are interested in some of these operations that are possible to cells. So when you go then you can see auto fit, you know, when you want to fit the width or maybe the size of the row. So auto fit, auto filter as one of these possible elements here. So all of them here represents the operation you know from Excel interface. It's easy to choose them or even copy. You see, first we can see clear if you want to clear the content of that range, or maybe if you want to clear comments only from that range, or maybe content only. You see, many of these elements here you could recognize because the list that is presented here, it's related to the range of cells only. So it's not the operation that is related to pivot, because the object that was defined here, it's a range object. So the object represents the range of cells, and the list of these operations you see here, this is the list that is related to the object range, the object that represents the cells of the application Excel. Nice. It means that it's very easy to guess what to do next if I want to, for example, copy that range, or what if I want to filter that range. Quite easy to guess because it's even exactly the same name we know from the Excel interface, right? We saw add comment, we saw copy, we saw clear, we saw auto filter, auto fit. Easy to guess. Okay, but At the same time, I think this way. Let's leave that example as it is now, and because this is an editor, why not to write our macro from scratch just by writing what we see above? So it means that let's start writing like sub, then we define that range. So it means that we start from that range. We have there, first of all, the macro name. So let's start writing here the macro same way as it was above. And maybe this time, let's imagine we are going to apply the filter. Instead of recording, we are going to apply it just by trying to do that, right? We try to do the same as it was above in order to apply the filter criteria just by just copying the idea we know already from above. So sub, let's call it apply autofilter, right? And we know already how to set it, how to set that range. So I'm even copying it from above, and I paste it here. I click a dot because this is the range covering the whole table, and still it's not flexible because if the table changes its size, so finally it's unfortunately not fitting the whole content of the table. So I then finally show you how to solve this and how to make it more flexible so that the autofilter will take into account the whole content of the table, right? But here, let's check how to use the autofilter. So I'm just trying to use it. Here you don't have to go with narrow. The only thing is to, if you know what is that element on the list, you could just choose it, start writing the name like autofilter. Look, if I start with the 3 letters A, UT, so finally the lists will navigate through the position starting with those letters, and then using an arrow you could fit what you want, you could just select what you want, and finally if you want to get it from that list you choose a tab button. So it's similar to the interface you know from Excel, because there if you want to choose a given function from the list, so tab button validate the choice. So this is how you can use it, but at the same time, look, how to apply the criteria? Because at that moment here, if you want to apply the criteria, the problem is, we don't know, right? You don't know. There's no such a place here telling what is the criteria you want to apply and what is the column you want to apply the criteria to. So how you should think about this solution? Of course, first of all, you could think, right, so maybe I'm recording the macro. I just want to record the macro, and by this macro recorder, I can guess how to do that. Yes, that's a good choice for you. But at the same time, it's good you remember, if you start your story with programming, you've got a big documentation accessible. You could use that documentation, that's the macros of documentation, and with that documentation, you could have even ready-to-use examples. And this is what you should consider always, because that's how you can learn a lot by these examples there. And this is what I suggest to do at that moment. How to use it, how to use the documentation. So usually it's very easy to run it because you do by clicking F1. Just click F1 next to that statement you don't know. It means, for example, I want to know what is autofilter, what's that? So I have to click it next to F1. I'm just setting the cursor position somewhere next to or maybe inside this text, and I'm clicking F1. And it should be it's something that automatically will redirect you to the web page of that documentation. Sometimes, like it is in my example here, the context is not working here. It doesn't work, right? So what you could write here is using the search engine. I'm going to use the search engine here, and I'm writing here autofilter. It could be written here. As you see, we've got the list of suggestion here, like autofilter Excel VBA. All right, this is what we want, so I'm choosing. And the first occurrence here, the first result we've got exactly what we need, because here it's related to Excel, right? We've got the auto filter, and this is what we are going to do, especially that's related to a range of cells. That's why this is the one we want to use. When you click, so you will go to the web page that tells you, yeah, this is it. It filter a list of by using auto filter. Perfect. The syntax tells you about how to use it, because it tells you that this auto filter has arguments like functions have. You know functions, what they are in Excel, and when I see the content like this, it tells me, okay, so auto filter has some arguments, and this is how I can tell what is the filtering criteria. Especially I can see here the arguments called criteria 1, criteria 2, operator looks similar to what we have in Excel interface. And you don't have to guess, because when you go down then, you can see ready to use example. I mean, ready to use, not exactly, because if we use another set of data, so you have to change what is that criteria. But in general, we've got some examples that allow us to guess how to use it. This is possible just to copy and change some elements of this operation here in order to get what we need. And let's do that. Of course, in our situation, what we've got, we are not going to use the reference to the given sheet. Here, by the way, we learn how to refer to a given sheet. We do that by just adding to our code a special part like worksheets and a sheet name. This is what we could have. This is an example showing you how to do that. So quite easy. It's quite easy to learn from that simple examples how to use your code to extend its impact on other parts of your documents, like it is here. But let's come back to our code. I'm going to retype it. So I'm going back to this code, and according to what we saw in this example, I'm going to define field argument. And to explain, what is the meaning of that field argument? By this argument, you tell this autofilter method what is the column number in your table, not on the sheet, but in your table, where you want to apply the filtering criteria to. So let's go back for a while to our data. Of course, you should do that for your data as well. And let's calculate what is that column number in this table where you want to apply the filtering criteria. Let's imagine we've got, for example, the column height, and we want to get all these having the height, let's say, greater than 170. Right? So this column is the column number 7. This is the column number 7 in our table. So the argument field must be set to 7. And the next argument, we define the criteria, what you want to define as a criteria, and the criteria is set by the argument criteria 1, if it's only one criteria you want to define. So here I'm writing criteria 1, that's the name of the argument. Be sure to write it 1 here, it's not L, it's criteria 1. And then I'm defining this value as text, it must be set as text. And it's very easy to just write it, because if it must be greater than, you write the relation character, like greater than, less than, equal to, greater than or equal, less than or equal, and then a value, for example, greater than 170. This is how you write it. And we just take it from the example we saw on the web page. So that's how we guess how to do that. Let's check if it works for us. So first of all, make sure if what you've got as an active sheet is the one we've got data in. So make sure if it's an active. So let's go back to that editor. Maybe once again I remind, you've got the shortcut Alt F11, left Alt and F11 to go directly to that editor. By the way, this is a switch. If you click Alt F11, and once again, so you go just in between these two applications. It's working like Alt-Tab, but the difference is it's only switching you in between these two applications, Excel and Editor, so it's very fast. That's why maybe it's worth to remember about this shortcut. And now, when you make sure this is the active sheet where you've got your data, now you could run this code, and this could be done using the icons you've got here above, just below the menu list. Look, you've got here the icon that looks like a green rectangle, and if you click it, you run the macro that you've got the cursor in. Remember to have a cursor just in one of these lines in the macro. No matter which is the line you've got the cursor in, doesn't matter. It could be the first one, somewhere in the middle, or the last one, doesn't matter. But make sure you've got the cursor in, because that's how this editor knows what is the macro you want to run. When you click it, so you run the macro. As you see, you could use a shortcut as well. If you like using shortcuts, so to run this macro, you use F5. So when you click F5 functional key on the keyboard, so that's how you run it as well. But when you run it, the macro will run. Unfortunately, you can't see the message telling you, oh, it stops, we got succeeded. You have no such information, but we could check it. Alt F11, and let's check if it works for you. If your table is filtered, right? If you've got the data filtered. For me, it works, hope for you too. So look that without recording the macro, we were able to define the auto filter just by going some simple rules. I show you that you could use a documentation on a web page of the Microsoft, and there you could find some examples ready to use, or maybe just simple rebuilding them, you get what you need. We apply the auto filter criteria only to one column. Then when we come back, because we should have a break now, but when we come back after break, we will continue that example, and I will show you how to finally apply another filtering criteria so that we can have the criteria applied to different columns, right? Because this is what I wanted to automate. If usually we apply the criteria to only one column, it's not a problem. But if you want to apply it to, let's say, 10 different columns, so it will be a time-consuming operation, and this is why it's worth to automate such an operation. So this is what I want to show you, and when we come back after 10 minutes break, so we will continue that example, and we will apply more criteria to this range. Finally, once again, I will show you how to make it more flexible so that finally the macro will work no matter how big is that table, because that's the next problem here, right? When we go back to our code, we can see that the reference is constant. Here, unfortunately, this text won't change automatically, and because that's a constant value, that's only a text. And if our table will grow up, because maybe you just paste new set of rows or maybe new set of data in general, so finally you will get always exactly the reference to that one you've got listed here. It's not what changes automatically here. You are responsible for changing that code in order to get the reference to the whole table. And this is what I showed you how to get that result. Remember then that reference we have here, it's always working on the active sheet. So that's reference because we've got no part pointing a given worksheet. This is always working on active sheet. Always when you see the reference, the range this way, it means that you work with an active sheet content. So this is how you could understand this code. Always you refer here to the active sheet because no sheet was pointed here, like it was in the example you saw on the web page. All right, we've got 5 past 6 o'clock. I suggest we have a 10 minutes break. We come back 15 past 6 o'clock once again, and we will continue with the next steps of this training. Okay, so maybe coffee if you feel that you need this, and let's come back after 10 minutes once again. Okay, so see you and hear you after 10 minutes once again. All right, I'm back. Hope you are too. And according to what I promised, let's continue the discussion. And nice to see that you are back. So, according to what I promised, I want to continue the topic of applying the autofilter, and I'll show you now how to add new criteria to that branch. This is something that you could always have here, and this is done just by repeating the statement that refers to autofilter. It means that, for example, if now we want to apply the criteria to our column salary, let's say, in our example here. So it's possible. So it means that still having the height criteria, height column criteria, we could apply the second one, and they will be added to the existing criteria. Of course, if you will do that for the same column, you will overwrite existing one there. So you should be sure to apply it to the columns that are that do not contain the filtering criteria, or if they are there, they will be overwritten. So now let's check what is the column number here. It's a salary. That's a column number 9 in our table. So I want to show you now how to apply the criteria to that column. It will be similar to what we have here. So it means that the only change it will be the field argument, because it must be set to 9. As concerns the criteria, it will look maybe similar. We will have, for example, the values that are maybe this time less than 2000. We'll see. Let's check if we've got some that are less than 2000. Yeah, we've got at least 3. I can see here exactly. So we have to repeat once again. Once again, we have to repeat it. I'm copying the whole statement here. I paste below, and the only thing I change is the value for the criteria, for the argument field and criteria. So here it will be the column number 9 in our range, and at the same time the criteria will be less than, and we choose here maybe the value 2000, less than 2000. Of course, it's easy to guess what next. If you've got more columns, if you want to apply, for example, the autofilter criteria to all the columns you have in the table, it could be done easy way just by repeating these statements, and each time you refer to the given column and apply a given criteria. That's how you can have it. Finally, I'll show you another possible ways of doing this, but first of all, let's check if it works. At that moment, once again, I'm just going back and clear the criteria, completely remove the autofilter, right? Completely remove it. And once again, I go back to the macro, click F5 to run it. And now I can see, yeah, both criteria were applied. That is how we finally have less rows than it was in the previous example. And if you want to check if it works, you could go to check what is that criteria that was applied. So I'm going to check it, and I see, yeah, it was less than. And when I see that value 2000, perfect. This is what was set there. And by the way, if you see this custom autofilter, now it's quite obvious what are these arguments you see exactly in the filtering list of arguments, the autofilter list of arguments. Why? Because look, now we can see the criteria 1, but here we've got another possibility to define criteria 2. And we've got an operator in between them like and, or. This is what we could have. And when we go back to this autofilter method, and we once again check how it's defined, maybe just go back to the web page when we've got the information about the syntax of this autofilter method. So we can see that along with the criteria 1, we've got at the same time operator argument, and the criteria 2 telling us that yes, we could define up to 2 arguments that we could connect with a special operator. Of course, We have no such an example here. We have always only one example listed, but at the same time, as I see exactly, only one example. So we've got many examples, but still these are the examples showing you only some of these possible usage that we have of the auto filter. By the way, if we go down, we can see that we can define multiple choice example that refers to data. This is quite a good example as well, so we could just go by this example then. But maybe first of all, let's go back to our example and let's try to record now the macro that is doing autofilter, because this is a good example to compare both examples, like the one we just write ourselves with the one that will be recorded. It's quite good solution to see the code recorded, because as I said, that's how we can learn how to do something extra. By the way, for example, if I want to know how to apply the filtering criteria by multiple choice, what we do usually using the autofilter syntax, right? Because for example, here I can choose many different positions on the list, right? So it's good to record the macro, maybe showing you how to apply the multiple choice criteria. Then you will see how to do that in the code. Okay, so let's check it. I'm removing the autofilter that we applied with the macro, and now once again I'm using the button allowing me to run macro recorder. So I'm going to status bar, I'm clicking the button, I can see the macro name. I don't care about the name at that moment, I'm just writing, I'm just leaving the name like it is, macro2, because it doesn't make sense for us to change it. Finally, we are going to make use of the code there, so I don't care about the name. As concerns this work, as concerns the location, we leave this workbook. We just leave this workbook because we want to store all these macros here in the document we work with. That's why I'm not changing it here. So just I'm clicking OK at that moment, and what I'm going to do is to apply the auto filters. I'm going to data tab, and I click auto filter icon. Then I'm going to the eye color column, and I choose from that column maybe 3 positions: blue, brown, gray, leaving green unchecked. And now when I click OK, this is the only operation I want to apply. I'm clicking stop button. So going back to the status bar, I'm going back to the status bar, I'm clicking stop button. Remember about stopping the macro recorder, because once again you forget. So all these steps then will be recorded. Finally, as I said, sometimes the Excel kit crashes in some situations, so be careful. When you start recording, stop it after you do what you wanted to record. And now I'm clearing the results, going to the code, and as you see, Excel automatically added the macro after the last one we wrote ourselves. And once again, it looks similar to the first one. I mean, we've got the stupid solution with comments here, and the code that was recorded here. And as you see, it looks different. It looks completely different than the one we have here. What's more, I can say the one we just wrote ourselves looks better. Why? Because it's short. Here, when we go through examples that were recorded, we see selection, autofilter, active sheet, then dot, range, autofilter. So it's not so easy like it is here. We just refer to the given range and we say autofilter. Looks easier than the code written here. We've got 2 different statements, the one here and the second in the next row. And by the way, editor used here the solution you know already, because it was used here when defining the autofilter. Maybe I just go back to this first example. It means that the macro recorder used the underscore character. That's to explain, that's the character that allows you to say to the editor, I want to continue the statement in the next line. Because usually if you've got long statements, and if if you don't want to have a long statement in one line, especially that it could goes out of the width of the screen. We know that using horizontal scroll bar is not a convenient way of just scrolling the text. So this is why if you don't want to have a wide statement, you could just split it to many different lines. And underscore characters, this is the character playing the role of the continuation character. That's how you tell this editor that you want to continue in the next line. So it's always possible if you wish. Sometimes if the macro recorder is doing it, it's quite stupid. I think, for example, here that underscore that we have here, it's not a good idea because it's split in a bizarre way, and it's not easy then to understand why it was split this way, when it was split exactly in that place. So I will show you, based on that example here, I'm going to use that criteria in our example. So I'm once again, I'm just adding here the same statement with the auto filter, right? But this time the criteria we define will be different. Oh, sorry. The criteria we apply will be different. So I'm just choosing from that list the persons having a given eye color, and I'm doing this referring to the column number 5, because the column number 5 contains that information. So I'm just referring here to column number 5. And look how this criteria 1 now is defined. It's defined with a special function of Visual Basic. This function is called array. And array, maybe you could think of that array like about the list of values, right? Because it is, in fact, a list of values. And this list of values, as you see, is exactly what we have chosen with checkboxes. So here, I want to define this exactly the same way, the list. And according to what we saw in the solution here, we see blue, brown, gray. So I'm writing it here. Maybe just copy and paste. Doesn't make sense to just retype. So I'm just writing it here, right? Blue, brown, gray. And this is how you define the argument criteria. But at that moment, we see in the recorded macro that at that moment, the operator argument was used as well. And this is very important because the value of this argument is set here to XL filter values, and this is a must to have it. So I'm going to use that part of code as well. As you see, all these arguments are always separated with a comma, right? So we've got the first argument, a comma, the second argument, a comma, and the third argument called operator. So we define those arguments to tell this autofilter how this criteria must be applied. What is that column? What is that criteria? And how it should be applied. So this argument operator tells us we want to define the criteria as a list of possible values we want to see. That's how you should understand. And as you see, I just omitted the underscore, but it's quite good and reasonable here to consider using underscore because, as you see, our statement is very, very long. And if you want to see now a very easy way to guess how many arguments we define, it's not so easy because we've got a lot of stuff here, right? So look, if we would use those underscore characters, we could simplify a little bit the code so that it will be more readable for us. Because now I'm going to list all these arguments, field, criteria 1, and operator, one below another. And using underscore, I'm doing this. So at the same time, I want to have all these arguments listed one below another so that they start in the same column. So now we've got here the first argument, field, that was defined. Then the second one, criteria 1. And then the last one, once again, I'm using underscore. And when I see the statement like this, it looks better for me because at the same time, it's a little bit, it's rather compact, right? It's not so wide in its shape, but at the same time, it's easy for me to guess how many arguments we define. We defined 3 arguments of the auto filter, and we've got them listed one below another. We've got some space here to define more complex expression here. So it's better, right? Here we've got more complex expression. It's longer, right? That is why it's good to have it as a separate line. Remember, this underscore character, it's standalone character, what means that you can't have it next to comma. If you just put it next to comma, you will get this text in red and the message that it's syntax, you've got the syntax error here. So remember to have at least one space in between underscore and other part of your code. Okay, this is very important because otherwise it will be treated as a syntax error. Syntax what means that the way you write your code is not correct. All right, let's check if it works. First of all, of course, remember that the situation you could have finally, if the criteria are too complex, you could have no rows in results, right? So take into account that if you see no results, it's not, for example, the macro that is not working. Maybe it works, but maybe the criteria is so that defines so that we have no results. So take it into account when you consider using the automation. Okay, when you click F5 to run it, so what we have gray, brown, only gray, brown left here, right? So even if we've got the criteria applied, is it working? Yeah, exactly. So we've got the criteria, brown, gray, and the only that stayed after the criteria with height and salary. This is why we've got only brown and gray, even if we listed at the same time blue. But blue was not present here because the criteria for salary column and for the height column excluded all these that have a blue eye color, right? This is why we got now such a position on the eye color lists. That's why I said sometimes you could have no results even if you just define the criteria that's too narrow and you can see no results, empty list. Could happen, of course, so take it into account sometimes. All right. So now you know already how to build your criteria. What's more, using the macro recorder, you could check any possible condition you want to apply. So it means that there is no reason here to discuss separately how to apply criteria to dates, how to apply the criteria, for example, for colors, because each of these operations you could just record and you can see. It's very easy, you know, now you know that it's very easy to just retype in order to just take it as a part of your macro, right? Because using that code, we build our own based on the information we saw in that part of the code, right? So this is what you could have. Record the simple macro applying the criteria, and then after analyzing the code, let's just use part of this code to define your criteria in your macro. This is always a good solution. But at that moment, still, look, our macro is not flexible. What I mean is not flexible. It means that it will be always related to the range we define here. And unfortunately, if we will paste another set of data to our worksheet, so finally the filter will be applied only to that range of data. So it's not flexible. You can't have finally exactly the same result for all the data there, but only for that range. So that range will be filtered and all other rows will stay with no filtering criteria applied. So how you can make it more general to always get filtering criteria applied to the whole data? Quite easy, but unfortunately I have to tell you about. So now, because I want to build another example, I'm doing a copy of that macro we've got here, because I don't want to repeat once again all these operations. That's why I'm copying it to the clipboard. Try to do the same. It's easy. That's editor, right? So I'm doing a copy, paste the content below the last macro, but you should remember you can't have the macros of the same name in this module, in the same module, right? So here you should remember to change the macro name, because otherwise you will encounter the problem and you will be informed easy way. Look, if I want to run the macro, I am informed I've got the compile error because ambiguous names were detected. What it means by ambiguous, it means we've got already the name that was used somewhere, right? Like apply autofilter. It's true, that's the problem here. So remember to change it. If you do a copy of the previous macro and you want to just rebuild, so make sure you change the macro name. Otherwise, you will encounter such a problem. So apply autofilter, and let's write here more flexible. So it's very tricky, but it's really very easy. It's really very easy. The only thing here to change is to change the range and to point only a single cell of that table. Once again, assuming that the table starts in the first cell of that sheet, the only thing here to change is to just refer here to the first cell of that range. Only the first cell, that's all. You don't have to select the full range. Yeah, it could be the one I saw the reference with the AND method, but it's not a good idea usually. This is because the AND got the problem with empty cells, right? If you've got empty cells on the way, so finally you unfortunately stops at the last with data just above the cell with no data. This is a problem, right? That is why it's not the perfect solution. But here, if you refer to just a single cell of that table, assuming that it starts in the first cell of your worksheet, so it solves the problem. It means now no matter how big will be that table, autofilter automatically will run on the whole. And look, now we've got completely different example. I switch back to clear the filter. And even if here only one single cell is pointed here, only one single cell, look, we've got only one cell pointed here. So if you run the macro, if you just run it, you will see it was applied, and it was applied to the whole data there, right? So it works. It works, and it's good for us, because otherwise we should remember about defining a given range. We've got no such a ability here at that moment to use a solution with a Visual Basic to get it, right? To get the whole range of data. This is why that's the easiest way of doing this without the big knowledge about programming, right? That's a simple trick, and we could get it easy way just by referring a single cell, and this is what I suggest you to do. But that's solution where you've got your table started in the first cell of your worksheet, right? Of course, if you know that this is always the same cell, still you could just point here that cell. For example, if you know your table starts always in the cell number, maybe I'll just show you. I remove that, I copy the whole table, and now, for example, let's imagine our table always starts here in C10 cell. That's the structure of the sheet. We know that the table starts here in the C10. That's always the position of our table. The starting point is here in C10. So why not to change it C10? We just point the first cell of that table. It's not a must to have even here the first cell. I mean, if you just point somewhere in the middle, still it will work. The condition here is to remember it must be only one cell. So I'm referring now to C10, and sorry, I'm running this macro once again, and I see it works. Yeah, right. No matter what is that, where is that table, it works. All right, and now because we wrote some macros in our document, you should know that when you try now to save that document, what I am doing now, so I check the desktop here. So you have to know that if you try to save it, you will be informed about the content of your document, because now your document contains Visual Basic project. And we've got in here the information that the following features cannot be saved in macro-free workbooks. So at that moment, you should know that the Microsoft will introduce the macro-enabled workbooks, and as a completely different type of a file from 2007, and you will see that difference in file type extension even. So it means that the extensions are different for files containing macros and the files that have no macros. For normal Excel files, you've got the extension XLSX, and for the macro enabled workbooks, it is XLSM. Of course, this was done for security reasons, because the macros you build, it's not a must to be related with Excel. It means that I could write a macro that will, run other application in operating system, like a virus application, could be, of course. So I could scan the whole computer, get the information I need, and I could send it without showing any occurrence of that running. So, and this is something that happens when you just open a file and you can't see when the macro is running. So for security reasons, Excel differentiate in between two types of a file: macro free workbook and macro enabled workbook. And this is what you should now choose when saving your file. So now you are asked to continue saving as a macro free workbook. Click yes. No. It means that if you click yes and you close the file, so all these macros you recorded, all these macros you wrote will be removed, and you just lose them. So that's why you have to click no, and in that file dialog, save as, you should choose in a drop down here, save as type, second position here called Excel macro enabled workbook. This is what you have to choose if you've got macros stored in your document. That's very important to choose it here. So you click here in the list, save as type, macro enabled workbook. You have to remember to check it. Unfortunately, Excel is not doing it for us. So even if the Excel knows there is a visual project, it's not choosing this by default. Maybe once again for security reasons, I don't know, but this is how it's happening. So you should remember about doing this manually. So now, after changing the file type, this is Excel macro enabled workbook. I'm just storing it on desktop. Maybe just call it VBA tips, right? And it's very important to know what is the difference in these two file types: the file containing macros and the file without the macros. The difference is, if you try to open such a file, you will be informed about the content, and maybe I show you how it looks like. So I'm just closing the file and the original, the one with sample data, and now I'm trying to open the file. It's present here, VBA tips, right? As you see, when comparing, even here, look, when comparing to the normal Excel file, even the icon is different. As you see here, we've got a label with the exclamation character, and this exclamation character tells you about that's maybe dangerous content. It has dangerous content, so be careful. But if you try to open this file, you will see a special message here. Look, you've got the information about the security warning. Macros have been disabled, and if you want to agree to run these macros, you have to click enable content. But once again, be careful. If you get that file and you don't know what is that file, if you agree, the macro could run automatically, and if it contains malicious code, so finally you could have the virus installed. That's why it's so important to understand the risk you've got here. But of course, this is not a file containing malicious code. That's why we could click enable content and make use of that macros we wrote, right? Okay, so the next automation. What if the content of our table could be always in different positions? So it means that we've got the table on different locations, because still you could automate this stuff. It means that even if it could be in a different location always, sometimes in the first cell, sometimes in the second, sometimes somewhere in the middle. So finally, if it's not always located the same place, somehow we need to get an access to that data in order to apply this filtering criteria. And I show you how to achieve that so that we can fully automate that process, right? In order to get that location automatically. And it will be based on the same tool you know from Excel. Because, for example, if I want to find when my table starts, the only thing to do is to find here the first cell with data. How to do that? When I use find here, so I can write a special placeholder, a wildcard, that's how it's called. And this wildcard tells this find tool that I want to find a cell containing something. Doesn't matter what it will be. An asterisk represents any string of characters. That's how it's here understood by the find tool. So it means I will find the first non-empty cell on the way when I click find next. So Excel gives me exactly that cell. I think nice. It's a perfect solution for me, because if I could do that with a macro, so finally I will get exactly one single cell of that table, and then I can apply the auto filter criteria, right? Looks nice, but how to apply it in the code? How to write it in the code? Once again, we could just record the macro that will show us how to do that. And this is what we could always do. But unfortunately, the code will be not so clear in order to guess how we can apply this to our data. So maybe we could run the macro recorder, check how it looks like. Maybe macro 3, we just change the name. By the way, you will see what will happen now, because if you reopen the file and try to record your macro once again, so you will see that editor automatically will add new module to your project. You will see that. So I'm clicking OK. This time I'm just using the Control F. I'm writing the asterisk, find next. Of course, the next cell will be found here. I'm clicking close, and I stop recording the macro to see what was recorded. And I go back with the Alt F11 to see, and look, it's not here added to the end of that list of macros like it was with this macro 2. If you reopen the file, here it's the internal rule that tells this automation to create a new module. As you see now in the folder modules, you've got the second one here. Of course, if you want to see the content, just double click, and that's the place where it is located. That's the place where it's located. And looks good. I mean, when I see the content, I see cells, fine, what looks quite reasonable. I mean, this is exactly the same what we said in that tool. Of course, the question could be, what are these elements here? How many we've got them and what they mean? But I come back once again to use that tool, fine, and look, if you click the button options, you've got here a lot of different settings, like match case, match entire cell content, within, search, login, format. We've got a lot of settings here, right? And what you see here, that's a correspondence of all these settings you saw in a dialog window. So even here you could recognize like match case. This is how you tell if you want to use case sensitive search or not. Using false or true, what it's easy to guess, because when you see false, it's easy to guess that another possible way of defining this argument is true, right? Quite easy. If we see something like search order, so we could recognize here one of these settings here by rows. So we search by rows, so Excel will go by rows to search for that value. That will be the order of doing this. So yes, we could very easy way to recognize how it's done, especially for us. The most important is that one here, because we just want to get the first non-empty cell. This is what we are interested in. By the way, if you want to check what is that find, remember to click F1, because if you set your cursor position next to, as I said, a documentation tells you about what's that, what's the meaning of those arguments. Everything is explained here. As you see, the syntax tells us, yes, we've got a lot of arguments here, but the parameters table tells you that only the first one, what, is required, and all of them here could be omitted. They are optional, so we don't have to set them. Of course, you should remember that if you omit, it means some default values will be set there. So be careful. But if you search for the cell that contains anything, all these arguments are not so important for us, completely useless. So that's why we could omit them. So when reading that content here, we could guess what to do and how to rebuild the content of our macro. It means by those arguments here, I state, all right, I don't care about the other arguments. I want to remove them. They are optional. I don't have to set them. So now when I go back, I could say, I don't care about those arguments. For us, it's not needed, especially match case. Doesn't make sense to have it. Why? Because if I want to have any string, if it matters, if I've got upper lower case letters, completely not. That's why to be removed. Of course, same will be with others. So that's why I'm just deleting them. Could be, of course, could be. I've read in the documentation that all these arguments are optional. I don't have to set them here. So now I see cells, find, activate. So I'm trying to connect that information I learned from the previous examples and from that one here. I see cells. So as I understand, we search through cells of the active sheet. Yeah, this is it. It means cells. This is an object representing all the cells you got on the active sheet. Find will search for the any character string on that sheet. Exactly on that range, in that range of cells defined by cells. So it means here cells in an object, and find is the operation we want to do. We find in the range of cells of the active sheet exactly the first cell that contains something. Doesn't matter what it will be. And then find returns for you that cell where we've got any content. And here we've got the reference to activate. But I think, we've got another dot, and I click once again a dot, and I see, oh, come on, this is the same list. We know from the previous examples. As you see, we've got here advanced filter, auto filter as well. So we are in home. I mean, we know what to do in order to now automatically guess where our data starts. And we could automatically apply the auto filter to it because we know what to do. It means that I don't even, repeat all these statements with our macro. We just copy that part. Look, I'm copying that part from here. I'm copying that part from here, going back to module 1. And here, with a more flexible example, I just replace this reference, direct reference to the cell C10. I'm replacing it with the cells find everywhere. So this is something that help us to automate our stuff. By the way, if, for example, you identify your table by a given header, so instead of this asterisk, you could search exactly for the given header. So for example, I could search for the header like ID or maybe salary. Doesn't matter. If you know that this header identifies where your table is, it could be used here. Of course, if I know, maybe just go back to Excel. If I know my table, my table is located somewhere in the sheet and that's the only content we have here, I don't care. It could be any character we search for, any string we search for, but because I know always we fit exactly the cell of that table. So we apply the autofilter exactly to that range. So now let's make sure if it works. Let's make sure if it works. When you click F5, so we should expect that. Perfect. It works. So maybe let's check once again. I just remove the autofilter, just change the position of this table. Okay, I just changed the position of this table. I'm cutting and pasting maybe here. And once again, I check. F5 works. So that's how you could have your macro working more general, right? Referring to the data that is located anywhere on the sheet, right? That's how you can do that. Quite easy way of doing this. And this is something that we could guess by recording macros, analyzing the code, and reading the documentation. This is very important to read that, because with documentation, you've got examples as well to check, and maybe even you could copy and just try to experiment with them to see how it works. Yeah, and maybe once again I go back to this example here. And the problem here with that solution, maybe that's the last discussion maybe here in that flexible solution here. It's very often when you record macros, you see the construct with the statement called with. And when I see the situation like here, when we apply the filtering criteria to many columns of the table, still referring the same expression like here, cells.find, 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 it could be simplified. And this is something that you could guess from macros we record in general, because, for example, now I'm going to record the macro that will apply for me some formatting. Of course, doesn't matter what it will be, but I want to apply the formatting because when applying the formats, you will see such a construct. It means you will see that a special statement of Visual Basic will be used that will simplify some operations. So I'm going to do that. So let's imagine I want to apply some formatting to the data of the header. I want to, for example, make it bold, apply the fill color. Let's see how it looks like. So I'm just clicking macro recorder. What could be the name? Formatting. Okay. And now I'm just selecting the range. It's very important operation now because there you will see in the macro how to refer to the selected range. So I'm selecting that range, and now after selection, I'm adding to the, to the ribbon, the home tab to change the fill color. Let's imagine it will be one of these standard colors. Maybe it doesn't matter what I'm using the light green color here, and I want to apply bolding. Of course, it is on already, but I'm applying, so I'm clicking bold once again. And that's it. Okay, that's sufficient. I'm just stop recording the macro. I'm stopping that recorder, and I'm going back to see the code. Once again, as it was in the previous situation here, the code was written here in the module 2. So I'm going back. Maybe just come back to the activate version. So I'm just activate, I leave it as it was. And now we've got another macro. Maybe I just make some space in between. And now I can see the construction here, like range O6 W6 select, and then I've got the with selection interior, and then we've got quite bizarre situation. We've got here a dot pattern, dot color, dot thin and shade, dot pattern thin and shade. I'm not now focusing on what is that because it's not the important element here. The only thing I see with. This is what is very important, with, and after I can see dot pattern color index dot. So every statement here starts from a dot. And this with is very important construct because it could simplify your code. It means if you want to refer always to the same object and you want to apply many different operations to the same object, you could do that with using that with statement. You just say with that object here, do this, this, and this, and this, and this. Looks a little bit better because if you just omit that with, or maybe let's imagine it's not possible to use it, so your macro will look like this. You will have to repeat selection interior pattern equal to solid. Then once again, selection interior pattern, right? Not that one. Sorry for that. I wanted to have it this. Sorry, Control C. Pattern, yeah. So pattern color index, right? And then once again, selection. Sorry, I'm a little bit exhausted, and now I've got the problem with selecting with keyboard buttons. All right, so now another one like color, right? Yeah. So look, that this is something that looks bizarre because it just repeats still selection interior, and instead of having of this form, we could use with, what simplifies the code. It looking more compact, and it's always the good idea to consider such a solution because that's how your code will be then simpler to understand. Maybe, of course, we could discuss, because we could say, hey, come on, a bit with it's something extra to our code, and then it starts from dot, what it means. But this dot here means continuation of that statement. This is what it means. We continue that statement we start here after with. In general, after with, you define an object. So same it will be if you define a pivot table. You could do any stuff here for pivots. If you define a chart, then you with a dot, you continue telling that you want to do with the chart this and this and this. So in general, after with, you define an object, and you could do with that object anything then using simple reference by the dot. We make use of that knowledge in our example. I retype this. Just one again builds another example. I call it, maybe this one I change the name to 1. And the second I give a name to. I'm adding the index because both will be doing the same, but the second will be rewritten with the new solution. It means according to what we saw, I'm using with and with. This is what should happen here, right? So it means that you've got with as the beginning and with at the end. This is something that we saw from this example. And then we want to tell with what was found. So with that cell that was found by the find tool, we want to use autofilter. And look what happened now. Instead of repeating always cells find, cells find, cells find, we say with the cell that was found, applied filter 1, 2, and the next one with that on the list. And maybe to emphasize that this is a part of the with statement, same as it was in the macro recorded stuff, we add indentation to tell that all these statements that are related to the object that was found. So the cell that was found. I'm just removing here some spaces, and now you are able to remove all these references to cells find once again, cells find once again. So look how good it looks like. Finally, you've got only the auto filter here, right? And your code is more compact. You say just with that cell that was found, apply auto filter 1, 2nd, and 3rd time. Because this is quite often you see that with statement, when recording the macro, it's good to know what it means. So once again, this statement with means that you want to do a lot of operation on that object you define here. So here a definition of the object should be, and of course for us the object is the cell that was found, the first one containing something. All right, this is what means that object here. And what is to remember here is that all the stuff you got inside must be started with a dot, because that dot tells this is a continuation of that statement, or maybe this is an operation on that object here. So this is why I wanted to tell you about this, because it's very important and to know what is with, especially that, as I said, when you record macros, it will be very, very often used by the macro recorder. So it's good to understand what is the meaning. With allows you to tell you want to apply many different operations on the same object, and that object is defined after with. After with is that object you've got here. So when comparing both examples here, we could say, yeah, a little bit it simplifies, because a long statements that we've got here was removed and replaced with just one with. You know, even this is the very important approach to programming, because at the same time it's more efficient. When I want to compare to everyday stuff we do, let's imagine you want to prepare your lunch, and what will be more efficient? To say, go to the fridge and take milk, go to the fridge and take butter, go to the fridge and take the oil, go to the fridge and take another, let's say, part of our lunch. So rather, it's better to say, go to the fridge and take that, and that one, and that one, that project, and take everything. And so that's the difference, right? It means here you tell each time you tell to the processor, set what is the first non-empty cell. Once again, set what is the first non-empty cell. And here in the second example, we tell, find the first non-empty cell and do with that cell these operations. Better? Yeah. From the efficiency point of view, it's better, and it means this macro will run faster. Of course, you can't see the difference, because still it's not a big task here. So it will be done very, very fast. You can't see the difference. But believe me, if you do that operation and you've got them a lot to do, especially if you do that for many different rows and many different documents. So it's better approach to have with, instead of repeating still the reference to method find, in order to once again find and find and find and other stuff here. So believe me, it's better solution, even if you maybe find it now a little bit confused about using this. But remember, the rule is, after with you define what is that object you want to play with, and then inside this with statement, so in between with and with, you just continue what you want to do with it. So you start with a dot. Of course, remember that here the automation works. So when you click a dot, you will see all the properties and methods, all this stuff you've got related to the object you define here. So this is not the complete list of all you can do in Excel. This is a list, the complete list, that tells you what you can do with the object you define here. And what is that object? The cell. Because the find returns for you a cell containing what you searched for. So finally, what you get is the list of all these operations you can do with the cell. That's how it works. Hope it was. Now I hope now it's clear for you what it means, what's that structure and how to use it. but it's good to know that, because as I said, when you record macros, it's very often you see, and maybe you are confused about what is this for. All right. Because once again, 1 hour passed. So once again, I suggest to have a 10 minutes break. And once again, we come back after 10-minute break and we will continue to remind. I want to show you then how to define some buttons to run your macros, how to define some shortcuts to have it, because it's something that makes running your macros easier, right? Especially that, it's the macro that we use quite often. Maybe it's good to have it in a shortcut. If we got the macro we use sometimes only, so maybe it's better to have a button. And I want to show you how to do that. So to encourage you to come back, we come back 20 past 7 p.m. So, and we continue. Okay, so let's come back after 10 minutes. All right, I'm back. Of course, I hope you are back too. And according to what was announced, now I want to show you how you can run your macro using some solutions like buttons and shortcuts, how to assign to them. Because, as I said, sometimes we've got the situation where, for example, we want to run this given macro very often, and if it's so, it's quite reasonable to define a shortcut to it, because we know we are going to use it very, very often. For example, several times a day. So it's a good idea to run it using a shortcut, right? This is why in this situation it's worth to consider defining a shortcut. How to define a shortcut? So it's quite easy. You have to use the interface of the Excel. That's why I'm switching back to Excel interface, and we have to list the macros we got recorded or just wrote. So I'm clicking View tab, going to the list of macros. Here they are, right? And now if you want to assign a shortcut to it, for example, we want to use one of these filtering operations, maybe the last one where we use that solution. So apply auto filter more flexible too. So to assign a shortcut to this macro, I'm just clicking Options button we've got on the right side, and we get the window that looks very similar to the one we saw when we start recording the macro, right? This is very similar. The only thing is we've got no macro name and the location, because it's already saved in a given document, and we could define a shortcut. So what you should know, a control button is a constant element of that shortcut. So it means that it's always on. It's always a part of the shortcut you define. And it's accessible with a control button as well. So for example, if you want to use the shortcut like Control U, so you just press U at that moment. Just U, control is pressed already. But at the same time, you should remember that defining the shortcut, keep in mind that you could override existing one if it's already defined for Excel application. That is why it's not a good idea, for example, to define a shortcut like Control C, or using a shortcut like Control C or Control V. That's these shortcuts we use very often to copy paste. And if you use such a shortcut like Control C, what do? You override the Control C that works as a copy operation. So be careful. It's not a good idea. Of course, finally you could remove it, but you have to take it into account when you define the shortcut, right? So maybe for the purpose of this training, this meeting, we could decide this shortcut even using a shift button, because maybe we know a lot of control, like Control P to print, Control C, Control V. So maybe not to override those that we use very often, maybe let's use a shift button as well. What is possible? Let's imagine, especially that, for example, if I want to use F button, right? Because it's something that's related with finding or maybe filtering. So when I use Control F as a shortcut, this override the Control F shortcut that what's doing, opening the file dialog when I can search for something. So I don't want to override this, but maybe with Control Shift F we could use that. So it means that we could use our macro to run the filtering criteria on our data just by using the shortcut Control Shift F. F stands after filter, right? Filtering. So maybe F is a good letter to have it. So because Control is pressed, I'm clicking only Shift F, and as you see, the shift was added. Now the shortcut looks like Control Shift F. All right. Of course, we don't care about description at the moment. We know we've got the descriptions there, right? We do that manually, so we don't have to do that here. So after define the shortcut, when you click OK, from that moment, you are able to use that macro, run this macro using a shortcut. So let's try if it works. Maybe, first of all, we don't know if that macro we build works, because I don't remember we check it. But let's check it now. Let's check it now. So I'm clicking now a shortcut. It means we've got on the sheet where the data is located. Maybe to make it more general, I'm even cutting from here and I'm pasting somewhere here, right? So once again, we change the location of that data. We know the macro is flexible, so the macro is searching for that content and automatically will set where it's located and apply the auto filter to it. So that's how it should work. And now I want to run this macro with the shortcut we assigned. What to do? Just use that shortcut, Ctrl-Shift-F letter. And as you see, wow, it works. It means our macro was run with a shortcut. And what's more, it doesn't matter now where the data is located, because it's this macro we wrote. It always works in context of the active sheet. So look, if I now copy this to completely different sheet, I'm creating new one. So I'm do a copy of that data. I'm just doing a copy of that data, copy to the clipboard, create a new sheet here, and I paste somewhere on that sheet, no matter where, because that's how macro works. And now we've got a copy of the data. It's completely different sheet. I'm clicking Ctrl-Shift-F. It works. Hope it works for you as well. Look how easy it was. We just open a dialog window. We just click a button options, and we just assign a shortcut to run this macro. From that moment, we could run this macro in a very easy way by just applying this shortcut, right? Just clicking the shortcut on the keyboard. Yeah, I see that it works. Nice. All right. So that's one of those possible solutions. Remember that this is the best solution if you are going to run the macros very often, because if you are going to run it, let's say once a week, so most probably you forget after 1 week what was that shortcut, right? So this is why it's not worth to do that. And maybe it's good to consider a button. Maybe it's better to have a button. We just click that button and finally we get the macro running. So how to apply this solution? Once again, it will be easy, but we've got here two possible solutions. Depending on what is that situation. For example, if the macro is always related to the content we've got on a separate given sheet, for example, on sheet 1, and here we are going to apply this macro each time. So maybe it's good to locate this button exactly next to our data set, right? Could be, of course, yes. And I'm going to just insert that button. I'm going to the Insert menu. So on the ribbon, I'm clicking Insert tab, and there you will have a Shapes button, right? A group of buttons that is here gathered in the one button Shapes. When you click it, you will have a lot of different shapes. No matter what you like, choose the one you just have on the list, no matter which one. Of course, it will be a good idea to choose the one that looks like a button, but it's not a must. I'm choosing, for example, the rectangle bevels because it looks like the button on the keyboard, right? I'm just looking like a button on the keyboard. So I'm looking this. I'm just changing, I'm just choosing this button shape. After drawing this shape, I'm just writing on the keyboard the content like filter data. Of course, doesn't matter what will be that text. I'm just adding filter data, and maybe finally make it better to just align to the center. I'm clicking these icons here to center this content. And to assign a macro to this button, it's very easy. You do that by context menu. So to get it, I just click right mouse button on it. Make sure you do not move a mouse, because if you do that with moving a mouse, so look, if I just click right mouse button, but a little bit I move a mouse at that moment, so completely different menu appears, like move here or copy here or cancel. Of course, I don't want to move, I don't want to copy, so I'm clicking cancel. So be careful not to move a mouse when clicking right mouse button, and if so, finally you should have a long list, right, the context menu for that object, and one of these positions there should be assign macro. Quite easy, right? Just choose that button and you will see the list, all of these macros you've gotten access to. As you see here, we've got below the information about the filter, and all open workbooks macros will be displayed here. Of course, if you wish, you could narrow down it to the, let's say, this workbook, or the one we are working with in general, right? So you could use, of course, the one that we are here, we've got only the one, right? The one we've got here. As one of these workbooks we will open, but of course you could use as well another workbooks that are open, especially the one that is called personal macro workbook will be visible as well here. So you could choose, for example, to run with that button a macro that you got stored in the personal macro workbook. Maybe I'll show you in a moment how to store the information there. So at that moment, it doesn't matter. I'm just choosing, once again, the same macro, right? Apply auto filter more flexible too. And I'm clicking OK. And when you finish the editing mode of that macro, of that button, so by clicking the cell or by clicking escape button, so now it becomes a link. As you see, when I just hover with the mouse over that button, I can see different icon, the icon that shows the palm, and this palm tells you, yeah, this is a link. This looks like a link, and it is. It is a link to your macro. So now look, if I click filter data, it works. The table is filtered. So quite easy it was defined. Of course, once again, it doesn't matter where the table is located. So I'm removing the filter, copying that table, maybe not that. I'm just copying that table, cutting and pasting it somewhere else on that sheet, and once again, when I click the button filter data, it's filtered. Once again, maybe to summarize, this button we used here, or this solution with the button we used here, that's the solution dedicated to the situation where we want to run the macro exactly on the data we have in that sheet, right? Because otherwise, look, if we want to use that macro and run anywhere on the sheet, so that solution is not a good idea, because every time we have to create new button, right? It looks stupid as a solution. So the shortcut was a better solution at that moment. But if the macro is exactly what is a part of that sheet, and you want this macro works only in context of that sheet, so it's a quite good solution to have a button to run it. Nice. I hope you like it. But if you still want to have a button running the macro, but this macro you want to run without the shortcut, because you don't like shortcuts, and still you want to have access to this macro by, for example, a ribbon, because you want to have this button always accessible, not only on that sheet. You want to run this macro on every sheet you've got in your document, or maybe even on every document we work with. So it could be done. It's a good idea to have a button on a ribbon, and you could have it there. It's quite, once again, it will be quite easy to define your own tab even, and there you could define your own button running the macros, running your macros. So this is the next step. But at the same time, before we start doing this, I think it will be a good idea to consider storing our macros using personal macro workbook. So this is the next topic we want to cover here. So it means I want to show you that, first of all, how to store your macro in personal macro workbook, what it means for you then, and finally, having this macro written in a personal macro workbook, we are going to define a shortcut, not exactly a shortcut, sorry, button that will run this macro that we store in the personal macro workbook. Okay, so first of all, in order to create a personal macro workbook for the first time, you should once again run the macro recorder. So I'm running this macro recorder using this button on the status bar. And you have to choose a personal macro workbook as a location for your macro. And the first time you do that, Excel automatically will create for you that workbook. So it will be created. And from that moment, it will be, as I said, always accessible, because that document will be still open. You don't have to even think about opening, because this is what Excel is doing automatically for you. Because it's hidden, won't be visible, cool for us, but it will be visible by your Visual Basic editor. Then there you could see that it's present and it's open. All right, so let's do that. The macro will be called macro 5. Doesn't matter what it will be doing for us. So maybe, let's say, it will just select the range of cells. That's all. Doesn't matter what it will be. The only thing is to record the macro in the personal macro workbook. So I'm clicking stop. Then, after selecting this range, I'm clicking stop button, and I go back to editor. And look, now on the list of the projects you've got in the project pane, look, the project explorer here lists another project. It's related to the file that is named personal xlsb. That's the personal macro workbook file. This is the file located in a special location. This location is called xl start, and all these files that are listed there, that are stored there in that folder, will be automatically opened by the Excel application. So what it means for you, it means if you just copy any file there, it will be opened automatically by Excel. That's how it works. So it's not a location that is a simple one, because it's hidden in that folders that belongs to the given operating system user. So that is why it's not so easy to find this file. But of course, the search engine allows you to do that. So just write here the personal xlsb and xlsb, and finally you get what is that location. And I'm just opening that project. I'm clicking plus button to open the project, and I can see here is the module where the file, this macro was stored, right? This is the macro we would call. Of course, this macro doesn't make sense for us, so I'm just removing it from here. I remove everything from here. And how I can have here the macros easy way? Copy paste. It means let's go back to the previous project, copy your macro from here, paste in the macro in the project personal xlsb. As you see, I'm now in the module 1 of the personal xlsb file, and I paste our macro. What's more, here you could change even the name, because maybe that name here is not adequate. So maybe just apply auto filter. Let's call it apply auto filter. Could be the name for that macro. And you should remember that's the personal macro workbook module. And starting from now, this macro will be accessible no matter what is that file we work with. So using the reference to that macro, we could run this macro anywhere, in a new document, in the old one we open, no matter what is the document, we could call this macro and it always will run. This is because, once again, starting from that moment, this personal macro workbook will be always visible here. It will be always open. No matter what you open, automatically personal xlsb will be open as well. That's why you've got always an access to these macros you wrote. You just write here in this module of the personal xlsb project. Let's check if it works. So, of course, it's good to save changes, to refresh what Excel has here. So I'm just click Ctrl S on the keyboard, the shortcut, what means we save the changes made to personal xlsb file. Remember that if you click Ctrl S here, it's like clicking Ctrl S in the Excel interface, because the project is related to the file, and that save button here means the same save button we've got on the ribbon in Excel interface. So this is what is a part of document. So no matter you click save here or in the Excel interface, it will be saved along with the file. All right, so now let's check if it works for us. First of all, I'm closing the file we were working with. First of all, I'm saving. I click save to keep all this stuff we created saved. And now I close it. Now we've got the Excel closed, and I'm opening completely new Excel instance, and I want to work with a completely new file. I click new. So the previous file is closed. But when you go to the Visual Basic Editor, I'm doing this with the Alt F11 once again to remind. What I can see we've got here projects like Personal XLSB and the project related to the new file we created. Of course, the one here we are not interested in, because this is what we are interested in, is Personal XLSB. That's the file containing our macros, and we want to make use of that macros even here. Even on that document, that is a new one, completely new document, book 1. Is it possible? Of course, yes. Because we've gotten access to this macro because Personal XLSB is open. So let's check if it works. First of all, I'm just doing a copy. Maybe for a while, I just open the source file. All right, and I copy from there once again the data, the sample data. I'm just clicking to save a little bit. Okay, so maybe first of all I just copy and paste. All right, so I'm pasting here. All right, and I just close that file. No, okay. So once again, that's a book 1 workbook, completely new document. Our document we worked is closed. It's not open, and now we are going to apply the macro that we stored in Personal Macro Workbook. So I'm going to define the link here on the ribbon. I want to define the link button that will run this macro coming from Personal Macro Workbook. How to do that? Easy way. Let's go to File, and we are going to set options of the Excel application. When you click Options, so there you can have the customization of the ribbon, or if you like, you could customize Quick Access Toolbar. So depending what you like, you choose Quick Access Toolbar or Customize Ribbon. Let's say we want to customize the ribbon. So we've got a lot of tools, and we want to have another tab here that is called Macros, and there we will have buttons to run all these macros we've got. All right, so when you click Customize Ribbon, how it's possible you can open? Try to use Alt F11, left Alt and F11 to open your Visual Basic Editor. That's the easiest way. When you've got your Excel file open, so you click Alt, left Alt and F11. So keeping press Alt, you just use the F11 functional key. That's how you open it. If it doesn't work and you've got the keyboard, laptop keyboard, yeah, all right. So use Fn as well. Nice. So look now at that options for customizing ribbon, because there you've got two lists, and here on the second one you've got on the right side, there you could add new tabs to your ribbon. This is done by the new tab button, right? You've got here below the list the buttons that you could manage the list, like for example new tab. By default, the tab will be added after the one that was selected at that moment. But if it's not that place, just next to you've got two arrows, and with that arrows you could change the position. Like for example, I want to move it at the end, so that's how I can tell I want to have it as the last tab of my ribbon. Of course, easy to guess that if you want to change the name, here is a button rename, or just with the right mouse button, you could say, I want to rename, because the name like new tab, not a good one. So I'm just calling it macros, my macros, something like this, doesn't matter, or maybe tools, what you like. And you know that Excel, all these buttons you've got on the ribbon organizes in groups. For example, here we've got the group of buttons clipboard, the second group is font, the next group is alignment, then number, style, cells, editing. So we've got several groups here, and all these buttons we got are grouped. So even here, as you see, by default, one group was created. It's called new group. Unfortunately, it must be present, right? It must be, well, we must have at least one group on the given tab. If you like, you could create new one. For example, if you want to split your macros into different categories, so you could have many different groups with different buttons, right? Because you could, for example, you could have buttons that run the macros related to text, the buttons related to data, the macros related to filters. So you could group them this way. But at that moment, it's not so important. So that's why, first of all, the only thing I am doing here is changing the name of the group. Let's call this group filters, right? Because the button we want to have is related to the filter we apply. We could have many defined in such a way. So let's imagine you could have several macros. Each one is responsible for setting different kind of filters. So that's why I'm calling this group filters. And we could have many buttons running different kind of filter. Okay, so now after you create that group, you could add buttons to it. And this is done by using the list you've got on the left side. But this list has its own filter, and the filter is defined in a drop-down list above. So look, now from that list, I'm choosing macros. So to see all these macros you've gotten access to, you could choose from the list macros. Here you will see more macros than maybe you see in your situation. This is because all these macros, they come from my add-in. This is why you can see them. But one of those that are present here comes from personal macro workbook, and it's mentioned here because quite easy way recognized, because as you see, we've got here the name of the macro preceded with the personal XLSB file reference. You see, you've got personal XLSB, then exclamation character, and apply auto filter macro name. So that's how you could recognize that this macro comes from your personal macro workbook. This is it. I'm selecting this macro and using these buttons in between, like add, you could add or remove existing macro. So I'm adding, so I'm clicking add, and this macro is automatically located here in the filters group of the macros tab. What you could do here as well, you could click a rename button and you could assign an icon to it. Unfortunately, I don't know why, but still it's quite, not a big list. So it means that you've got only few icons to choose from. I think it's not a good idea. It will be a good idea to add here the functionality like just pointing the icon you wish to use, but it's not. So let's say here it could be one of these icons here, like for example, I'm just choosing the one here. What you could change is the name of the macro. So for example, if you don't want to see personal XLSB apply auto filter, so maybe it will be good to have here the name like filter one, or maybe filter and the name that tell us what is that filter, right, we want to apply. So consider using such a solution. Of course, for us, filter one is a good name at that moment, but of course it's good to define a name that will tell us somehow what's that filter applied. Okay, so I'm clicking OK, and after, when you validate all these changes you've made and you click OK, you should see another tab on the ribbon that is called macros. Of course, this is because we assign name macros, right? And there you should have a group filters with a button that allows you to run the macro now. So look, now I'm clicking the macro. I know the macro works so that it always relates its work to the active sheet, and it will search for the first non-empty cell and apply the filter to all this data there. So no matter what is that file, no matter what is that data, it will apply the filter criteria. Look, you see? That's completely new file. It's nothing to do with a personal macro workbook, it's completely different. But because this file contains the data and we run the macro from our ribbon that is macros stored in personal macro workbook, so it will work for us. So once again, maybe to remind how it's organized, I'm going back to the object, to the Visual Basic Editor, and once again, look, here we've got an extra project that is related to the personal macro workbook. There, we've got only one module, right? And in that module, we just the module containing the macro filtering our data. So we just paste here our macro. You know already that macro, we discussed this in the previous part. So I just paste that macro code in the module 1 of the personal XLSB. After saving, no matter is the file you work with, it will apply this filtering criteria. So maybe as a proof, once again, look, I'm opening new file, a data source. I'm opening that file. So it's completely different, right? Completely different file. Thanks to these operations we've made, still the macros tab is visible because the change was made to the application Excel, not to the given file. So it means that the macros tab is always visible. The personal macro workbook still is open because we've got the Excel application open. That's why personal macro workbook is open, and the link we have here, the button that is linked to that macro, will work for us because the macro works in context of the active sheet. So look, when I click, wow, it works. So it means that table is filtered. The filter was applied to the data we have on the sheet, data 2, of that document we open. It's a completely different document, right? But it works. So that's the advantage of using personal macro workbook, because having the macros stored in that personal macro workbook, they are accessible from the point of view of all the documents you work with. No matter what is the document you open, you've gotten access to this macro, so you could run it. So having this button on the ribbon, running the macro from personal macro workbook, right, from that project, this is the solution that allows you to make it working globally. Globally means in every document you work with, right? No matter it's a new one or the old one you open, doesn't matter, it will always works for you. Once again, maybe to see, I'm completely closing the Excel application. So I'm closing that document, that's the data, okay, without saving changes. Same as here, book 1, without saving changes, I don't care. And now I'm opening a clear version of the Excel application. So I'm opening, right? Excel opens, asks me what to do, if I want to just create a new document from template, or maybe just create a new empty. I'm opening the file, empty file. I'm going to Visual Basic Editor by clicking Alt F11, and I can see, yeah, personal workbook is still visible. It's here, it's present, it's open, even if we didn't do anything to do that, right? So it means that Excel opens this file automatically when the Excel application starts, and we have nothing to do with that. It means that it was automatically done by Excel application, and it's good for us. Good for us because if you store all these macros you want to use in the personal macro workbook, you could use them anywhere, in any file that you work with. That's why it's worth to do that. So finally, if you've got the list of macros you want to use, like the one here, so finally, we can have, by the way, let's imagine we want to have another macro here. Maybe we use an index 2. Let's imagine now I've got the macro with the index apply autofilter 2, and we want to use another different filtering criteria. Like for example, here we will have only brown and gray, and we want to have here maybe greater than 180 and greater than 2000, right? That will be different filtering criteria. Of course, they are based on the same columns, but they are completely with different criteria, right? So now I can add another button that will run for me this, exactly that filter, this macro here. And to do that, once again, I'm going back to Excel, File, Options, Customize ribbon. I'm going to select the macros here and the filters group. And once again, I'm choosing all the macros. And now I can see 2, the apply autofilter 2, I'm adding. So now I've got 2. I'm renaming like filter 2, filter 2. Once again, I choose some icon. Maybe this one will be the next we could use. Click OK. And when you click OK, you can see that on the macros tab, we have now 2. Filter 1, filter 2. And if you want to run it, of course, we should have some data, because otherwise it won't work. What's more, the shape of the data must be the same. We should have at least 9 columns, because we refer to the column number 9. So we should have 9 columns to make it working correctly. So I'm going back to our source data. I copy. Oh, I don't have to copy, right? I just open, go to macros, and I apply the second filtering criteria. Just click the button filter 2. How easy it is, right? Quite easy, really. Once again, the success is thanks to the personal macro workbook, because that's how we make our macros working globally. And still, to emphasize how to do that, first of all, you record the macro to store for the first time the macro in the personal macro workbook. That's how you do that. And after the first recorded macro in the personal macro workbook, you could edit this as you wish. I mean, you could do that even by copying, pasting the content here. So no matter what is that operation, you could do that. What's more, if you've got already the whole module storing the data, for example, let's imagine you've got another project like I've got here, for example, in the toolbox, I've got many modules, and what I can do, I can just drag and drop the whole module with all the stuff there to the second project we have here. So look what happened now when I just drag and drop over that project, personal XLB. So here now I've got access to all the content of that module that was called functions. By the way, it's good to give a name to your modules because here with that name you could maybe just tell yourself what is stored in there, like it is here. I've got here functions, and here I've got procedures, and here I've got another stuff that is auxiliary in some projects. So that is how you can have it. And even here, if you want to rename the given module, you just select that module and you go to the properties window here, the properties window, and just rename it. Remember not to have a space in the name. But you could rename it. Let's say it will be called good thing. Doesn't matter what will be that name. It's important. It's a descriptive way of telling what's inside, right? At that moment, of course, I'm just using the name, and it looks nice, but finally, if you think about naming, think about the name that tells you what's in there, right? And remember, you can have many modules, and in many modules you can organize your work. Let's imagine you've got, for example, 100 macros, right? and to manage them and to store only in one module, it will be not an easy task. But if you split them by categories to different modules, still they are accessible and they are located in different places. So for example, here you could have, let's say, 30 macros, in another one you could 40, and all of them are related to the given topic. Like for example, if you want to, for example, split your macros by topic, because I want to have the group of macros related to text, related to data with numbers. So maybe this will be a good concept of the division, right? But of course, you decide about this. It means what are these modules you define? It's your choice. The best is, of course, the one that allows you to organize it the way it will be then easy for you to guess what's in there and how to find the one you want to. So this is something that is very important. By the way, usually if you want to then share these macros with other person, so consider using here the solution with add-in. It means you could store all that stuff you work with as add-in, and all these people that have such an add-in could just install and use all this stuff you define. And it's possible, that's a good idea to do that. And because it's very simple to do that, I will show you, because this is something that you could always have. And to prepare such an add-in, maybe once again, to differentiate, because personal macro workbook is a good solution if you want to work with your macros and it's not what you want to share with others. But some of these macros you build, sometimes you want to share with others, right? So it's good to share them by add-in. Of course, it could be shared different way. You could tell, okay, this is the code of the macro, just paste in a Visual Basic editor and it will work. Okay, it could be. But at the same time, you could just share with others with those macros by preparing a special document that is called add-in. For example, I've got here the add-in installed because this is the add-in called Toolbox. That's the add-in I'm prepared. This is having three modules: aux, functions, and procedures. All of them contain some content, right? This is the content of these modules. And if I, let's say, send this file to you, you could install and could have all the stuff there, right? This is what you could have via the add-in. So how to build an add-in? It's really very easy task. You do that by creating, usually you create completely new empty file. That's the starting point. You just create empty file. And finally, you go to the editor, to the Visual Basic editor. You go to the Visual Basic editor. And now, because this is for the first time we do that, we have to somehow define here a module, and it could be done same way as it was in the previous example. So you record the macro, you want to store it in this workbook, and automatically Excel will add for you the folder modules, and it will create a module with the content, so with that macro you recorded. But at the same time, it's not a must have it this way. I mean, if you've got already documents open that contains macros, right, like it is here, for example, the personal macro workbook. So once again, how you could do that? By dragging it. So look, we've got here the module good thing. Let's drag it to the book 1 or the book 2 document. That's a new one we created a moment ago. And now, as you see, automatically the modules folder was added with that good thing module. Of course, when you go there by double clicking, the content is exactly the same as we have in the personal macro workbook. Of course, it's not a must to copy everything. If you don't like to share with all this stuff there, you could go there and delete some stuff. Like, for example, I just delete the one here, right? I could delete. Yes, of course, you could. So finally, you decide what are these macros you want to share with others, right? So after dragging and dropping the whole module, you could then delete what you don't want to share with others, and you leave only those that you want to share. I leave everything, and now you have to save that file as an add-in. So I'm clicking Ctrl S because you do that for the first time. That's why that's a good moment to tell what is that file you want to save, exactly what is the file type you want to save. And from that list, save as type, you have to choose what? Excel add-in. Here you've got Excel add-in. You are going to save this file as Excel add-in. This is how you have to do that. Unfortunately, Excel automatically switches you to, as you see, to the folder where by default add-ins are stored. Depends on you if you want to decide. It's not a must to have it there. If you wish, you could just save it on desktop. But finally, you have to remember that this location must be constant, because Excel, when you install the add-in, it will always open that file as well for you. Same as it is with a personal macro workbook. So if this file changes its location or changes its name, so Excel won't be able to open it, and you will always be prompted with the information that this is not accessible. So the file is not accessible. So in general, you decide where to save that add-in, where is the location for it, but finally you can't change it, because if you do that, you have to once again tell Excel where it's located. So it's not so easy, or maybe not so convenient way of doing. That's why it's good to first decide about what it should be located, because once again, Excel will always refer to that location and exactly the file. Okay, so maybe for the purpose of this training, for the purpose of this training, I'm just saving it on desktop. Doesn't matter for us, and I'm calling this cool stuff, or maybe cool tools. Cool tool. Oh, that's a good name. Cool tool. Of course, it's your name. Once again, it doesn't matter what will be the name of that add-in. You click save, and now if you send this file to others, they should install first, and after installing, they've got access to it. So how to access these add-ins is quite easy, because look, now if you want to install the add-in, we have to use the interface of Excel. I'm going to install the add-in. I'm going to file menu. I'm to file tab. Now I'm going to options. So same as it was for setting the customizing ribbon. And now from that list, you go to add-ins. Very easy, right? There's add-ins here. So I'm clicking. Now, maybe it's quite tricky, because here we've got the add-ins listed, but what you should click here is the go button. Make sure you've got here chosen Excel add-ins, because now we will play with Excel add-ins. So after choosing it, by default it is set here. You click go. And here you've got the window where you've got the list of add-ins that are accessible. You could turn them on if you wish. For example, mine add-in is automatically checked here. But if I uncheck, so I can't see then this tool project in the Visual Basic Editor. You will see. So I uncheck it. But at the same time, I'm clicking Browse button, because I want to point the one we saved. So now I'm pointing desktop location, and I just click that cool tool add-in. Look, that the add-in has a different icon than the Excel files. It has an extra, let's say, green square added. So it's a little bit different icon telling you that this is an add-in. So I'm clicking this cool tool, clicking OK, and now it appears on the list, cool tool. Click OK, right? And when you go back now to the Visual Basic Editor, now you will see that one of these elements here is the project cool tool with the extension XLAM. That's the extension of add-in. And all this stuff there, you've got accessible. So all the macros that were written there are accessible. And if you wish, you could now go back to the ribbon and point that the button should run this macro, because this is working same as it was for personal macro workbook. So you could go back to File, Customize ribbon, and you could point those macros that comes from this add-in. That's how you can have it. So that's how you share your macros with others. It's the easiest way of doing this. Quite easy to define such a add-in. Just saving as add-in and sharing with others. You send and tell that it should be installed this way. I hope it was useful. At the same time, look, Toolbox disappears. You see, we've got book 1, book 2, but there is no Toolbox. Why? Because I just unchecked. It's not active. It's installed, but it's not active. So it means installed means that the Excel knows the path to that file. But if I want to have it to use in my projects, I have to go to check this box to say I want to make it active. That's how it works. So, what I said, personal workbook solution is a good solution for you if you want to use the macros only in your machine, right? On your machine, and you want to have them only for you. If you want to share, the best choice is to use add-in, and this is how you do that. So hope it could be useful for you. Yeah. By the way, all these projects you've got listed here, they've got the name Vba Project, Vba Project, Vba Project, blah, blah, blah. Maybe you could customize this here. Of course you could, and you do that by the Tools menu. That place we already know a little bit because we set options settings for that editor. But at that moment, we have to set properties of the project when you click it. So you could name your project. For example, cool project could be, if you wish. You could add the description of the project, so what it contains, if it's needed. You could have your own help file for that, if you wish. So as you see, this is something that is possible. But at the same time, what is nice, you could protect your code of the module with the password, so that anyone that want to see the code of your macro must know the password. If not, they cannot see the content of your project. I'm leaving this here because it's not so important, but I'm telling you that this is possible. So if you don't want anyone can see the content, the code of your project, it can be protected with a password. So before the project could be opened, the password must be supplied. This is how it works. Okay, let's change only the name of the project, Cool, and look how it looks like. So it means that the project related to our add-in is called Cool, with a cool tool. That's how it could be changed. Yeah. So to summarize, all these, let's say, techniques and approaches you've got here, it's very important to know that, first of all, you have to think in terms of objects when you play with Excel application and other applications as well. For example, if you want to automate PowerPoint, the rules will be the same. Finally, it's good to use, of course, macro recorder, because with a macro recorder, we could have some sample codes. And with that sample codes, we could then investigate more about this content. Especially remember about the documentation. Just with the one click, F1, you can get an access to documentation that tells you how to use it, how to use a given object, how to use a given tool, like for example find method, auto filter, because there you will find examples as well telling you maybe how to do that. That's why remember that help you've got accessible by the internet. This is something that could be really helpful for you. Not always, unfortunately, because sometimes the information is just little tip, and it's not telling you everything that is needed, unfortunately. But of course, then you will have another places, like, for example, forums, even if you use search engine in the internet and you just write what we need to get, so there you will find as well the answer for that. So if you then combine it into one macro just by doing it like it was here, by copy paste, and doing some extra changes, that's how you can make your macro more flexible, more readable at the same time, using those techniques I presented to you. Of course, it's not all about programming, but I hope the stuff I presented to you shows you that it could be quite easy to do that. And yes, I can answer yes. In some situations, it's really so easy, but at the same time, you should know that programming is a challenge. It's always a challenge, no matter you know what is programming or not, it will be always a challenge. And it takes time. It's not 2 seconds job, right? Sometimes you have to spend a lot of time to get it, to get the macro working correctly and doing what you like. So this is why you should remember about this, but it's always worth to do that. It means that the whole day work, you could just, compact squeeze into 1 second of running your macro. It's possible, and this is something that you can have with the macros. But of course, in order to do that, in order to have such a possibility, you have to know more about this, about programming, because that's of course the first steps you could have with programming. But of course that's the beginning. But still, of course, once again, when you want to start your story with programming, so to remind, on March we start the training, the continuation of this topic we discussed here. Remember about this. First of all, remember that you could have it for free, and in order to have it, there is a challenge for you at the end, as I promised. So, what is that challenge? What is that challenge? So try now, using the same techniques I presented here, like recording macro, like using documentation, online documentation, try to run the macro, build a macro. Try to build a macro that will copy your filtered data to other sheet. It means that we want to get only that rows that are visible after filtering, and you want to just copy and paste to another sheet. This is a target for you. That's a challenge for you. Of course, you could make use of that macro we already have. So it means that this is the beginning of our macro. It means the macro will filter for us the table, and after filtering, the next steps are to copy what is visible and then paste to another worksheet. This is your target, and that's your task to do. From those that will send to us a correct code doing that operation, so we will select the person that will take part for free in our training. So take a challenge. I hope you can manage. Remember that this is something that forces you to experiment, right? You have to experiment with the code, with macro recorder, and try to then using the solutions with that macro recorder, with that documentation online, try to build such an example that will do that for you. So of course, let's assume you've got already the sheet that is the destination one. It means you don't have to create a new one. Let's assume, for simplicity, that you've got already existing sheet and you want to just copy and paste the content to the existing sheet, right? Maybe it could be called like destination, or maybe report, or something like this. It's not a must to create. Let's assume you've got already the sheet that exists, and you want to filter the given table and copy the visible part of your table to the sheet that maybe is called report. So that's the target. That's the target. I hope you can manage and you succeed with that. You succeed with that example. Try to do that. Try to do that challenge because this is how you can make sure you can do that. So I leave you with all this information. Hope it was useful for you. Hope that all this information encourage you to do that, to continue that story with programming. Hope it's something that is interesting for you, and if you find it interesting, so let's go back. You will see how to do that more professional way, and how to make it once again more flexible and working in any different situations you could have in your documents. So now I leave you with that challenge. Please send back this to the email. Maybe let's choose my email. So let's send it to the email slavomir.sroka@comarch.com. I will check the solution if it's okay. If it's okay, so you will go to the list of those participants that will be taking part in the lottery, and we just choose from that list one person that will take part in this next training for free. So it's worth to take a challenge. All right. So wish you luck in this task, and I hope we will see on March, maybe, if it's something that you find it useful and interesting. So once again, I invite you to take part in that training, and wish you luck in your task. So hope see you again and hear you again. Maybe this time we could just we could talk using the messenger, because here it's not possible. Too many persons out of here. So see you and hear you maybe next time. So let's go back if you like. Hey, bye. Nice to read that you like this training. Nice. Thank you for that. It's good to see that it's not worthless for you. All right. See you. Bye.